I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, a few weeks ago, the big announcement from the NDP here in British Columbia was for all us landlords, what is going to be our allowable rent increase for the coming year. And I always look forward to this one to see how much the NDP finagle this number, which they have been for many, many years now. But they just made the announcement for 2025, we as landlords are allowed to raise the rent 3% to the tenants. So I'm going to be sending out my notice here at the end of September because you have to give 3 clear months, and it'll be effective January 1st, 2025, 3% across the board. So a few things, you guys know, I've done lots of blogs on this. This is the NDP and their forked tongue. They talk about how they want to make homes more affordable. They want to make things better for tenants. You know, if you're a tenant watching my blog here, a renter, ask yourself, be honest, do the mirror test, ownership. Take ownership here. Has the last 5 years, has things gotten better for you as a renter, as a tenant, or have things gotten worse? I'll answer it for you. I know because I've got a rental portfolio and I see it day to day. I'm selling units all the time. I'm giving notices to tenants, that we've sold the home, trying to find a place. It's gotten far worse for you. Rents have skyrocketed. You know, typical one bedroom in the last, since 2019, is probably up $1,000 a month for the typical one bedroom in downtown Vancouver. A cool $1,000 a month extra is what that's costing you. Vacancy is near zero, if you can even find a good property. So the 3%, last year they gave us 3.5. You know, just to recap here, up until the NDP got into power here, it was always the inflation number, which is CPI, plus 2%. But you see, the NDP thought the 2% was way too greedy for us landlords. They removed the 2%. But now, of course, they don't even give us the true CPI. I don't know where they come up with these numbers. It's supposed to be some sort of rolling average of inflation, but the numbers are not correct. Last year, they gave us 3.5. It should have been closer to 5%, according to the economists that I tracked, something like around 4.8. They gave us 3.5. This year, I'm reading that this amount should have been closer to 4.25, but they're giving us 3. So that's what they do. They don't even give us the true CPI, and tenants wonder, well, where's it all going wrong? You know, it's really kind of crazy here. I've told you guys before, I've been a landlord for over 30 years now. My father's been a landlord for over 45. I've got lots of clients, hundreds of clients I represent that have been renting homes and buying investment properties for decades. I never raised the rent on my tenants up until 3 years ago. 3 years ago, after the COVID freeze, not being able to raise rent, and tenants all froze, they didn't move. I never raised rent on my tenants, but when the NDP came in, froze the rent during COVID, no rent increases, and then finagled, took out the 2%, and then don't even give us the true CPI number, I had no choice but to start doing the allowable annual rent increases. And a lot of landlords did the same thing I did, and now they're starting to give the annual increases as well, which is another catalyst for those rents to go up that the NDP will never talk about. You know, it's funny that EB there and our housing minister, they talk a big talk, you know, that they want to help people get into homes, make homes more affordable, make things more affordable for renters. But I've told you guys, all the taxes, all these restrictions that they've put, the war on landlords, let's call it, has a reaction to it. And that reaction is what you're seeing playing out now. Vacancy near zero and rents have skyrocketed, but they never talk about that. They only talk about, you know, the rents keeping it at 3%. And, you know, even everything is political with the NDP. You know, in the press release here is Ravi Kahlon. He touts himself on the shoulder that, hey, we're only raising rent 3%. We're keeping that to the CPI number, which isn't correct. It's more than 3% here, Ravi. And we removed the 2%. So you see, they're always patting themselves on the back, trying to make themselves look good. You see what we're doing for you renters? We're not even giving the landlord the true CPI, and we removed that 2% back, 5 years ago. And we're watching out for you. Well, if we're watching out for you, Ravi, then why are the rents gone through the roof, up $1,000 on a typical one bed, vacancy near zero, and you can't even find a place? Do you ever talk about the repercussions from these things that you try and make look like you're doing something here to people? There's a fallout to this. The other fallouts, I'll just go through the list of things here. The rent freeze for 2 years for COVID, even though landlords, of course, they didn't get any break from their mortgage companies. They still had to pay the rent. Mortgage rates started going up. They never got a reprieve from the banks, but yet the tenants get a 2-year break on any rent increases. Then you remove the 2% plus 2%. Then you don't even give us the true CPI. We have a double dip on the GST if you're buying a new unit and you sell it within a year and never live in it. So double dips on the GST. We've got the greatest flipping tax known, which is capital gains tax, which the federal government just increased to 67%. We've got a new anti-flipping tax, which comes into place January 1st. So if by chance you really luck out, you buy a pre-sale 5 years ago, you get the keys on it and you want to sell it and you've made a little money, which is tough to do. But if by chance you really get lucky and make 50K on it, they're coming after that, plus the double dip on the GST. So you're probably not going to be left with any profit. Empty homes tax, BC spec tax. It just goes on and on and on. So they have this war against landlords. And the other thing they don't understand is, why is nothing getting built? Well, developers, when they're doing pre-sales, you know, a good portion of their buyers buying these pre-sales, especially the one beds, the studios, are investors. Well, if you've got a war on landlords here, double dipping on the GST, very erratic behavior on how you react to these tenants. What's coming next? Rent control, complete rent freezes, can't raise the rent when the tenant does leave back up to market rate. Who knows? So you've got that, you've got the double dip on GST, the anti-flipping tax coming next year. So you've spooked a lot of those pre-sale buyers that were investors. And then you're wondering why the latest headlines here in the Vancouver Sun where nothing's getting built. So again, they speak with forked tongue on this stuff. I know most of my viewers understand this. They get it, but it's amazing how many people don't. They think the NDP is looking out for them. And just face the music here. If they are, then why is the situation currently the way it is? And what's happened, of course, I've talked about it, lots of long-term mom and pop landlords, investors who'd have owned units for 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm going to be getting there pretty soon myself. I'm getting on here. I'm looking to probably semi-retire here in the next few years. And eventually I'm going to start slowly selling off my investment portfolio. And I can tell you that most of the buyers for the homes that I'm going to be selling are going to be end users. Vast majority, and I'm going to do it right. I'm going to get that, wait till my tenant leaves or buy my tenant out and sell it vacant. So at least I've got the full demographic of buyers. But I look on the MLS every day. I would say at least half the units, the one-bedroom units or studios or even two beds downtown, probably half are tenant occupied. So if you're selling the home tenant occupied, no matter what, an investor can't buy that unit. So more and more units that were in the renter pool are being removed. And that's the other reason. Supply is shrinking, rents will continue to go up. And it's not going to get any better, guys. If you think the NDP is telling you that there's going to be, you know, sunnier skies down the road and we are building finally some purposely built rental here in downtown, but it's 5-6 years away, population continues to grow, it's not going to keep pace with the increased demand. It's going to get far worse if you're a renter right now in Vancouver. The rents aren't going to go up quite as much as they've done here the last 5 years, but they're still going to go up well above the inflation number. Because, you know, inflation is one thing, but I pointed out before, property taxes have been going up double digit. Maintenance fees have been going up double digit. Inflation has caused those all to skyrocket. Insurance in the last 5 years is probably up across the board 200%. So the cost to hold these homes is up a lot more than 3% here, Rafi. You know it, and you get what you get. There's a reaction to these actions you guys do here. And it's going to continue that way. Vacancy is going to continue near zero. As tenants move out, those rents will be back increased to a lot more than 3% to make up for the lost ground. And populations are going to continue to grow. Home ownership is getting further and further out of reach for people because we're not building any new supply. We're building some rental supply. That's just going to keep more and more people into that renter quicksand. You'll see. So if you're a young person and you're renting, you got to do everything you can right now to get that down payment together and get out of that. As a landlord, I'm telling you, nothing wrong with renting a year or two, but you do not want to become a renter for very long in a city like Vancouver. You're going to get crushed financially. You have no hope. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.